Right, this is going to be the first of two videos about cumulative frequency graphs. So, cumulative frequency graphs are a little bit strange. You learned about them in year 9. It sounds like quite an odd word to use, quite a complicated set of words, cumulative frequency. Basically, cumulative frequency is just a running total. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a cumulative frequency table, first of all, and hopefully that will make sense, where basically we record, in this case, some marks, and we record a running total of marks, and then we'll go into graphs afterwards and talk about how you go about drawing a cumulative frequency graph. So, first of all, if you look at this table, let's say we had a group of students in a school, and let's say they did a test, and let's say the test is out of 60. So, you can see here you've got 4 people who scored between 0 and 10, 7 people who scored from 10, not including 10, but all the way up to and including 20, from 20, not including 20, so leaving that out, but all the way up to less than or equal to 30 and so on. So usually you get given the frequency table to start with, and then the first part of the question will say, make a cumulative frequency table. And all that means is, think about the running total of the frequencies. So to explain what I mean by that, you've got 4 people who scored between 0 all the way up to and including 10. So if somebody said to you, well, how many students scored from 0 to 10? You would just write down 4. Now the next category is 10 to 20. And you can see there are 7 students who scored from 10 to 20. But let's imagine, instead of worrying about 10 to 20, what if somebody just said, well, how many students scored from 0 all the way up to 20? How many students are in the first 2 categories? Okay, well, that would be 11. The 4 add the 7. So we get 11. And then you might say, well, what about the students in the first 3 categories? What about those? In other words, what about the students who scored from 0 up to 30? So we're keeping a running total this time. Not just the number of people in each category, but the number of people as we add the categories in. Well, 11 added to 12 is 23, like that. Okay? How many people scored from 0 to 40? How many people are in the first 4 categories? We add the 15, we get 38. How many people in the first 5 categories? Okay, 38 out of 7 is 45. How many people are there in total in all the categories? Well, that's going to be 50, like that. So, cumulative frequency means a running total. Now, just to make this super clear, those first 4 people in this category here, they are the people who scored less than or equal to 10. So ignore the 0 at the start. They're the people who just scored less than or equal to 10. These 11 people are the people who scored less than or equal to 20. In total, out of the whole of the students who took the test. These 23 are the people who scored less than or equal to 30. These 38 are the people who scored less than or equal to 40. 45 students scored less than or equal to 50, and 50 students scored less than or equal to 60. So this last number is kind of what tells you the meaning of the running total. So, say we've got this and we want to draw this thing called a cumulative frequency graph. We don't know why we want to draw it yet, but we are going to draw one. It turns out to be useful. So, first of all, when you draw a cumulative frequency graph, you draw axes that look as normal. The vertical axis is always going to be the cumulative frequency. The y-axis is always whatever's in this last category. So I'm going to label this as cumulative frequency. And the horizontal axis is always whatever else there is. So in this case, we're recording marks. So you just write down marks like that. Just squeeze it in a little bit like that so you can see it. Right. Then, if you look at the cumulative frequency axis, and you should always do the table before you do the graph, you can see these cumulative frequency, these running total numbers, go up as high as 50. So my graph has to go as high as 50. So this isn't a very good graph. I'm drawing it on just a small whiteboard. A really good tip is when you do these graphs, the bigger they are, if you're not given a set of axes, the bigger you can draw them, the better. The easier it is. Don't draw them too small. But for my graph, I'm going to make this Let's say this is 10. Let's say this is 20. Let's say this is 30. Say this is 40. And say that's 50. It won't be very accurate, but it's good enough. On the bottom axis, I'm going to plot the marks from 0 to 60. But people often do things like they put like inequalities in. They write down things like, I don't know, they put a little dot and they say 0 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 10. They're often confused about what they're putting on this axis. What we're going to put on this axis is literally just a scale that goes from 0 to 60. The mark go from 0 to 60. I'm going to have my scale go from 0 to 60. So I'm going to have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. So the scales just look normal. Then I've got to plot my points. So to plot my points, what you do is, I'm going to read across each of these rows, and I'm going to plot, this is the y-coordinate, and the x-coordinate is always the score that you're less than or equal to 2. So this here, the end of these categories are going to be the x-coordinates. So I'm going to plot, for example, 10, 4. So here I go in my graph. I'm going to go 10 and 4 is up a little bit. Put a little cross like that. So I've plotted 10, 4. I'm going to plot 20, 11. So 20 and up to 11 is about here, more or less. So notice again, each of these points, like this 20, 11, there's a meaning to it. And just pause the video if you need to and think about this. The meaning is 11 is the height. So 11 people scored less than or equal to 20. 11 people scored less than or equal to 20. 30, 23. So the end of this category again is the x-coordinate. 30, 23 is about here. Again, my graph isn't super accurate. 40, 38. Oops, excuse me. 40, 38 is about here. So again, just small, neat crosses. 50, 45. Maybe about here, perhaps. And 60, 50. So about there. Okay. So I plotted my points. X coordinates at the end of this category. Y coordinates are the running totals, the cumulative frequencies. Okay, almost done. I'm now going to join these points using just a smooth curve through them. You can, it's not wrong to rule lines between them. So have a line and a line and a line. You're allowed to do that at GCSE. Usually it's a bit better just to do a smooth, neat curve through them. It does take a little bit of practice and you might need to rub it out a couple of times. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to join these. Just slowly. Again, when you do these, use a pencil, use a rubber, use a ruler, get them looking good. Okay, and that's pretty much my graph done now. One last little point I'm just going to mention, which is, this is perfect, okay? This is all you need. Some textbooks, so if you look online or you're revising sometime from a website or whatever, some textbooks also kind of join the graph back to, well, the lowest point. When I say the lowest point, nobody scored less than 0. So 0 is the lowest score you can get. So they join it back to whatever the lowest score is. So some textbooks you'll see will kind of join back to maybe 0, like that. There might be one or two occasions where we talk about that, but you can do it or not if you want to. I'm not so worried about that, but you do need to join the points. Okay, so just briefly before we get to the next video, again, you're going to make a cumulative frequency table when you're drawing these. When you do the cumulative frequency table, think carefully about what each of these running totals means. For example, what does the 38 mean? 38 means 38 students, in this case, scored between 0 and 40. So 38 scored less than or equal to 40, 45 scored less than or equal to 50, and so on. Cumulative frequency always goes vertically. whatever the other quantity is that you're measuring, like marks, or if this was weight or time, goes horizontally. The scales have to fit the full range of numbers. Here it's got to go to 50. For the marks, it's 0 to 60. Draw on the points. X coordinate comes from here. Y coordinate comes from here. Draw them on neatly. Join them up with a smooth curve. Okay, when you've done that, you'll have a perfect cumulative frequency curve or graph. Either way.